Hi, I'm Jean Priscilli,
Gianluca Bianchino.
and we are the curatorial duo Wavelength here at Index Art Center in Newark, New Jersey for the closing party of Light Years Away. This show is about star mapping, star charting, visualization of space, and related matters. And we're really not interested in a scientific framework, literally. We're looking for artists that are thinking about space and astronomy, but using it in an artistic and creative context. Right now we're standing in front of Amber Heaton's Summer Triangle, and this is depicting the particular location in Newark with the GPS coordinates we're standing at right now for the duration of the show. And it is following the movement of three sister stars across the sky, as well as tracking the length of daylight each day. So this is the type of artwork that we're looking for and that we've included in the show. It's not literal, it's not particularly a visualization of scientific ideas, more about the way the artist processes their ideas or thinks about them and then manifests it to a larger audience. It's more of a phenomenological experience for the viewer and more of a creative way to approach it. We're not looking for literal science to be depicted.
So yes, my name is Gianluca Bianchino, and as Wavelength, we are, again, a curatorial collaborative. I'm primarily focused on making art, and Jean is primarily focused on being a curator. But we meet in the middle in this collaboration where we bring together similar interests. So it's almost as if before we formed this collaboration called Wavelength, we were always sort of working together. And this was a kind of framework where we could have some continuity about the subjects that are of interest to us. And generally speaking, the ideas for the shows come out of the work that we see people doing between colleagues and also tendencies in the art world. So the relationship between art and science right now has been growing. There are more and more artists who are interested in this platform, in making work by investigating concepts in astronomy, biology, or just nature in general. And the execution is very different from artist to artist. There's a broad range of works. So we look for works that are in some ways transformative, again, not too literal, not charting necessarily a scientific theory, but more so having works where the artist takes the research they do in science, maybe even applies some data visualization, but create their own narrative, create their own concept of space and time. So we tend to find interest in works that have a kind of timeless narrative. This year we thought that there's a lot of artists that are interested in star mapping, star cartography, as that has always been an important trait in human history. And now that we have technology at our favor with large telescopes that are actually kind of spaceships in themselves traveling through space, the idea of star mapping, star cartography is, expanding. And in this work, you might find that is influencing anything from spiritual takes on art to even science fiction having a kind of influence in storytelling. We have some works that are that involve video, where there's an actual story being told by an artist, or works where there's multiple works narrating the life cycle of a star, for example. I think with curating this particular show, and also other shows that we've done together, we don't have a hermetically sealed concept. We have a very basic abstract idea in the beginning. And we start off maybe with a list of a few artists that we've already known of. And that sort of supplies us a kind of path.
A baseline, maybe.
A baseline. And from there we start building on the idea, So we start actually writing about the show later, once we've
assembled the works.
Assembled the work, like a good 90% of the body of work is there. And that in itself helps us find maybe a few more artists to kind of close in on the show and have this sort of broad scope of artists working in mathematical, scientific principles, fantasy, spiritual, metaphysical.
I think one of the things I like about curating collaboratively is that as a curator, when I'm doing solo endeavors, I tend to work with artists that are doing things that require collaboration, installation, or large-scale sculpture, social interventions. And I wanted to see if I could push that further in my curatorial practice, and working with Gianluca does that. I was thinking, just as you were talking earlier, about how did the advent of our collaboration begin? And I do think it helps because I've spent time with you in the studio, and I've been to installations and even assisted occasionally, worked with you on solo shows, written about your work. But I think really kind of began when we were both reading that book, Art and Physics, together. Yeah. And it was a book by Leonard Shlain that talks about how science was actually trumped sort of by art. And artists were thinking about things like quantum physics in the 1800s, well before physicists were. And reading that book at the same time, we started talking about these concepts. And, fast forward a number of years, it just made sense because we had this continual dialogue that we would begin curating based on our mutual interests in these ideas to create shows that were discursive in nature. And I think that's another hallmark of our curating together, because we're not that we disagree, but we have different visions and we have to make them one unified vision. And working in this discursive framework where there's more of a dialogue and less of a conclusive end result or a specific thing that we're thinking, it's more of an open-ended conversation. That is a direct result of working collaboratively. I find that when I work alone, my end result is a little bit more direct or a little bit more definitive in the end result. And I like this open-endedness. It's a little more like working as an artist, like you do. I like that artists are willing to take risks. And this curatorial collaborative allows me to do that. So that's what my interest is in working collaboratively, and I think the benefit.
Yeah, it's a very creative process, this curatorial practice, because I feel that we're not just hanging works on the wall, but in a way we're participating with the artist and assembling a kind of larger installation that encompasses work from different artists.
And there's a lot more talking going on. As a solo curator, I have to make all these decisions by myself. I wouldn't necessarily have found the same artist, and I like the idea that I can bounce ideas off of you, and maybe you sway me a certain way, or maybe you push me a certain way, and I like that flexibility. I like that it's not all just me, that I'm not the only author.
Yeah, and then we've been expanding on this project by having interviews with artists that we publish on a blog. So generally we tend to curate about, right now, the pace is about one show per year. But throughout the year, as we interview some of the artists that have been featured in our show, and even artists that have not, but whose themes resonate with us, it helps us build ideas for the next exhibition that we might curate.
Or the next piece we might write.
Or the next piece we might write.
Very good. So now, where can people find you?
Wavelengthart.org, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we are on Facebook at Wavelength, or you can find us on wavelengthart.org. We're .com.
wavelengthart.com.
Wait, hold on. Let's just back up and do it again.
So I'll do it. So you can find us on wavelengthart.com. That's our website. And even better, if you go to WordPress and you can find us under WordPress Wavelength Art, where you'll see a series of interviews as well as a piece written by writer Tom McGlynn on our curatorial practice. So it'll give you some insight to the nature of the dialogue between art and science that's going on, and what it is that as curators we look for in this dialogue.
And don't forget our Facebook page, where all of this activity will be streamed in one consolidated area.
Yep. Also Instagram, that's big these days. Wavelength art is the hashtag. You know, however you do things.
You got to get the word out every way you can.
Exactly.